hey, you know what? This stuff is kind of starting to get in the way. Maybe I've picked up too many traditions, too much seasonal decor, too many decorations. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Minimalist Podcast, where we discuss what it means to live a meaningful life with less. My name is Joshua Fields Milburn. Merry Christmas, T.K. Coleman.
It's the best time of the year. Thanks for joining me. I've always been here.
And that beautiful Christmas laugh you hear in the background, that is Malabama.
Hi, everybody.
We've got the rest of our team in the studio. Nicodemus will be joining us next week for our New Year's Day episode. But coming up today on this free public minimal episode, a caller has a question about letting go of seasonal decorations. If you're watching the video version of the podcast, you'll see we've got a lot of seasonal decorations sort of hanging out in the studio. Malabama was here all night last night wrapping presents, and man, we got to get rid of some of these.
I can't wait to unwrap them later.
We've also got another listener who has a question about opting out of consumer culture, specifically the consumer culture here in Los Angeles. Then we've got our lightning round segment, a FAM's question, and a listener tip for you. You can check out the full 2-hour Maximal edition of episode 423. where we answer 5 times the questions and we dive deep into several simple living segments. That private podcast episode is out right now at patreon.com/theminimalists. Your support keeps our podcast and YouTube channel 100% advertisement free because, say it with me, y'all, advertisements suck. Let's start with our callers. If you have a question or a comment for our show, give us a call, 406-219-7839, or email a voice recording right from your phone to podcast@theminimalists.com. Our first question today is from Jen.
My name is Jen Hill from Nottingham, New Hampshire. Hi, I'm a big fan. I've listened to many of your podcasts and I've watched the Netflix movies. I'd like to believe I mostly have a minimalist mindset, except when it comes to decorating. I grew up poor in a broken down trailer out in the woods, which looked as bad as it sounds. Now, as an adult, I want to keep my place really nice, like straight out of a decorating magazine. And I just love decorating for the season. And after listening to many of your podcasts, I always feel guilty about this. I mean, should I stop this maddening nonsense, these seasonal cycles of change and updating decor? Is it wrong? What do you think?
TK, should I stop seasonality is an interesting question. And as someone who loves to have control over a situation, when things change, I often cling to what was. I remember living in the Midwest. We both are from the Midwest. And as summer started to drain and we went into fall, I'm still clinging to the warm weather and the sun. And then eventually winter's going to happen. And I realized that nature doesn't really cling. Seasonality is nature's way of letting go. Nature just lets go. When fall rolls around, it lets go of the leaves. The trees start to shed their leaves to make room for what is next. And obviously, you'll see all of these decorations around us here. We're recording this episode that's coming out on Christmas Day as a special surprise for our audience. But I'm not going to keep holding on to everything that's in this room a month from now or a quarter from now. We're not going to hold on to it until next year. Now, it's okay for me and my family. We hold on to a few things, Christmas lights, and that we use seasonally every Christmas. Earlier this month, we went and got our Christmas tree and we put it up in the living room. We have a tree stand and we have a few Christmas lights. And if you want to do ornaments or whatever, you can totally do that. But eventually, it all comes down. And I think the heart of this question, correct me if you have a different point of view, TK, but to me, the heart of this question is a question about permanence and letting go. How can I let go and achieve permanence? And what I'll say is there's permanence going on beneath all of the seasonal decorations. The seasonal decorations only get in the way when they are out of season. When you have one expectation, but then something else is happening in front of you.
Yeah. By the way, speaking of Christmas decorations and so on, I'm genuinely thinking about leaving up my Christmas tree for the entire year
Really?
and decorating it in accordance with whatever season we're in at that time
I've seen that.
and finding a way to Christmasify all the different holidays. Having a discussion with my wife about this because I don't know if she can tolerate the Christmas tree being up all year round. So we're dealing with some things in the Coleman household regarding cycles and letting go.
So would you have a Valentine's Day tree in February?
That's
and
exactly
a
right.
Halloween tree in October?
That's exactly right.
Oh,
with
fascinating.
with colors, ribbon, decorations, ornaments that represent that time of the year. So if it's, July 4th, right? You have a July 4th red, white, and blue Christmas tree with things like that. Yeah, you have an Advent tree, have an Easter tree, all the different things.
Heck yeah.
So anyway.
And this is one of the common misconceptions, right? That as a minimalist, it has to be stark white walls. It can't be any decor. But as we've shown on the private podcast a bunch of times, when we do these home tours of different listeners of ours, they're all so appreciably different. The commonality, though, is they've simplified down to a level that is appropriate for them. There is a lack of excess in these spaces. Now, for some people, any decorations for any holiday may feel like excess to them. And if so, no judgment. I'm not going to say you should put up Valentine's Day decorations. You should celebrate Halloween. What about Flag Day? TK might want to put flags all over his Christmas tree, but other people may not want nothing to do with Flag Day, and that's okay. The question then becomes, what is appropriate for me? What enhances my life, amplifies the joy of the season?
I think about when my brothers and we used to play video games growing up. There was this new feature they introduced, which is common to all the games now. And that was you can create your own player, right? And so if it's a football game, you can choose how good of a passer this person is, how good of a runner this person is. And there was a little bar you could raise up. I want this person to be a really fast runner. And every time you raised up one bar, you noticed that a different bar in another area would come down a little bit. And so you had to economize. You had to think, okay, I want this player to be really fast, but at what cost? Do I want to give up his ability to catch the ball when it's thrown to him entirely? Well, I'll bring my speed down a little bit so that I can bring that up a little bit. And minimalism is a little bit like that. Anytime you try to maximize your joy and your freedom in one area, you're confronted with this question of, what am I willing to give up in order to experience that increased amount of joy and freedom that I want? And it's not about doing things from a state of, oh, I can't or I can. It's about doing things from a state of, does this support the kind of freedom that I want to have? And am I willing to pay that price? And the heart of this question for me is really, am I being driven by personal conviction and love, or am I being driven by external demands made upon my life based on socially induced guilt? Because everything that you said here, Jen, began with, I love decorating, and I love this. And I heard the joy in your voice. And then the bit of contrast that was introduced was, but I feel guilty. Now, where's that guilt coming from? Now, if it's coming from within because there's something else that you really want to be doing with your life, and this is holding you back from that, all right, that's worth taking a look at and saying, okay, I will use my guilt as a way of guiding me into asking the right questions about my real priorities. But the question here is, am I inspired to let something go because it feels too heavy? Or am I pressured to let something go because other people make me feel guilty? If you're driven by the former, then that's going to make your life feel lighter. But if you're driven by the latter, you're just opening the door to bitterness. There's nothing wrong with creating a context where people can give us feedback and challenge us to think about what we're doing, but that can't be the end game. It can't be about orienting your life around what other people think you have too much of or too little of. There's got to be a point where you say, all right, I'll consider that. I'll be open-minded and curious about it. But at the end of the day, I've got to go with my conscience and my own convictions. And so if you love it, I think the thing to get rid of here would be any pressure that other people are putting on you to love something other than what you actually care about.
Isn't it fascinating that it's often the opposite? We get people who call into this show and they're like, I don't really want to celebrate the holidays. I don't like all of the consumerism, the decorations, all of this stuff, but I feel the cultural pressure.
Yeah.
And what you just said was beautiful, because if the stuff is weighing you down, the decorations are weighing you down, if the relationships in your life are weighing you down, the obligations and the meetings and the holiday parties are weighing you down, letting go is incredibly freeing. But if it's a weight that's actually caused by the cultural expectations of the people around you, if those decorations and everything else that you're using in your home and in your life aren't weighing you down, but someone else is coming along and putting their hand on the scale, so to speak, maybe it's their expectations that are weighing you down. And at that point, we have a choice. I can let go of the stuff and appease the people who had the expectations, or I don't have to even pick up their expectations that they're trying to hand to me in the first place.
That's right, man. When I fire up my Christmas music in April, in September, at any time of the year other than Christmas, people tease me. People make fun of me. They go, don't start playing that until after Thanksgiving. And I just laugh it off because I don't need to force them to be the same way. But I also don't have to give up something that brings me joy, even if it's a little eccentric, even if it's a little weird, just because someone else says that's not right for me.
I saw recently when everyone was sharing their top Spotify plays of the year, when the whole thing comes out, everyone's sharing all of their artists. And then I see people arguing with the people who just simply posted like, oh, I really happen to like Drake, or I really like Taylor Swift. And they're like, oh, yeah, you're just like everyone else. It's like, well, there's a reason that these singers or these artists are popular, right? And if someone enjoys it, who am I to just come along and say, you know what, TK? It's too mainstream. You shouldn't enjoy that. And vice versa. For me to come along and say, you should enjoy Michael Jackson's music. Well, I enjoy it, but it doesn't mean that you are supposed to, or I need to hand my preferences to you as well. And so ultimately, I think what this comes down to for Jen is, what are your preferences? It seems like you really enjoy these things. However, there's some sort of conflict here. The reason you would call into a show like this is because you have some bit of conflict. Now, it could be conflict with other people's expectations, or it could be a conflict where you're like, hey, you know what? This stuff is kind of starting to get in the way. Maybe I've picked up too many traditions, too much seasonal decor, too many decorations, and I'm having trouble storing the stuff, and maybe I've run out of room for the stuff even, and now I have to get a storage locker for the things, or I have to keep it at my mom's house or a friend's house or whatever. And at that point, it does become a burden. The answer is not to simply get rid of everything, but what do I let go of that still captures the essence of what I'm trying to do for any holiday, whether it's Christmas, Thanksgiving, New Year's, etc. Jen, thank you so much for your question. Our next question is from Anna in California.
Hi, my name is Anna from Thousand Oaks, and my question for the minimalists, as a new and aspiring minimalist, I'm wondering if you found it any harder to follow the minimalist path after moving to Los Angeles. It's the place that I grew up in and still live, and it's just so consumer driven and flashy and all about appearances and just very consumer culture. So I'm wondering, did you notice that? Was it any harder? Are there any tips or tools that you used yourself to adjust after moving here? And I kind of think about it like somebody who grew up in Vegas around gambling culture and how that might be harder for them to step away from that later in life. So thank you. Bye-bye.
TK, I've had this conversation with Nicodemus, who, by the way, is going to be joining us next week for our New Year's episode. Yeah. I've had this conversation several times because we're from the Midwest, you're from Chicago, you've lived in a few different places, and it is true that Southern California, but Los Angeles specifically, does have a different type of consumer culture. I think it's not different from Chicago or Dayton, Ohio, or Charleston, South Carolina, but it's amplified in a way. It's magnified because of all of the consumer choices that we see driving past us, walking past us, all of the billboards and advertisements that are promoting a particular ideology that you are incomplete and these things will complete you. So before I talk about my experience of moving here and being steeped in consumerism, Which, by the way, I have learned that it is easy to become transformed by whatever you're steeped in. If you're around a lot of people all day who are just complaining, you're probably going to start complaining. If you're around a lot of people who are loving and kind, you're probably going to be loving and kind. You're steeped in love, you'll be more loving. It's the reason we do hugs at our live events.
Yeah.
It's contagious, right? So whatever you're steeped in, you transform into. And I think had I not prepared for a decade plus of simplifying my life, it would have been a whole lot more enticing to complete myself through the consumer culture of Los Angeles. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, places do seem to have a vibe about them, if you will. There's a thinker by the name of Walter Wink who has a book called The Powers That Be. And in it, he lays out a conception of angels and demons, whereby he says an angel or a demon, depending on its effect, is sort of like the transcendent personality that emerges out of a place or that seems to characterize a place. So you go somewhere like New York and it's kind of like there's like the spirit of the hustle, right? Even just going to buy your groceries in New York City feels like a grind. When you get back home, you feel like you conquered the world just to do that. Or you're like in beach culture and it's kind of more laid back. You're in the South and it feels more like family and everybody knows each other to the point where if you're an outsider and you come in, it feels like everyone is in your business a little bit too much, right? Or in LA, you know, there's kind of like an ambition, a materialism. And there's something to that idea that, metaphorically speaking, institutions, companies, cities have a culture. And when we move and work in these spaces, that culture can infect us or affect us and radically alter our mindset if we're not grounded in a understanding of who we want to be. And LA has some elements. I was just talking to someone about this yesterday, about what it was like to live in Charleston. And when I was there, it felt like, man, I should probably make sure I'm paying attention to the things that really matter in life. I should make sure I'm slowing down and spending time with the people that I really care about. And then when I got to LA, it's a different feeling. It's sort of like, man, I better make sure that everything that I'm meant to do with my life, I really get after it and I don't waste my time. And so those types of things are real. And part of the balance in life is figuring out how to select to the best of your ability spaces and places that support the person you want to become so that you don't feel like you're always at war with the world. And at the same time, on the flip side, it's developing the sort of self-knowledge so that you can show up to any environment respecting yourself as a causative force in that environment. That I am never the sole product of who I'm around and where I live, but I also have the ability to inspire and influence people in those spaces to think in a bigger way, in a deeper way. So here in LA, people just don't stop and say hi and talk in the way that they do in Charleston. It's just not a comparison. It's just completely different. But at the same time, there's a little bit of that Charleston flavor I bring to my LA experience. And, you know, I don't yell at people for not saying hi back. I don't try to evangelize the entire city of Los Angeles into being more like Charleston, but I can bring a little bit of that flavor and say hi a little bit more. And even if 9 people ignore me, that one person who says hi back or lets me buy them a cup of coffee makes a huge difference. And so I think finding that balance is important. But yes, there absolutely is a difference. But do I allow that to make me stop being me? No.
I think the same is true when Nicodemus and I first moved here. It was bringing a flavor of simplicity that we had embodied for a decade into the city. And in a weird way, that almost exposes the folly of consumerism. When you show up in a place where it's almost, there's a lack of pretension here. I mean, Las Vegas is the, I think, premier example of this. It wears its heart on its sleeve. It wears its impulse on its sleeve. It's consumerism on its sleeve. And so no one goes there and is like, oh, I can't believe all of these lights. And I mean, I'm sure if someone's forced to go there, they might, but you're actually kind of going there for it, even if you think it's silly. And it's possible to spend a weekend in Las Vegas, as a lot of people like to do. It doesn't sound fun to me. And recognize the folly and still enjoy it. Our old studio, you'll recall, was on the Walk of Fame in the heart of Hollywood. And to me, it was just, the whole thing seemed absurd and silly. And it actually made consumerism less appealing to me. Because here's the thing, when you think about Las Vegas, it's so absurd that gambling doesn't feel like a tug to me. But there are other things where I'm like, oh, I really like basketball. What if I just put $20 on this game? There are other things that are a bit more pernicious, right? Because it can tug me just slightly in that direction.
Yeah.
And I think the same was true when I was living in Ohio. Going to the mall would encourage me to consume more than what I needed. But since I'm steeped in all of this excess that appears ridiculous to me now, it makes the consumerism seem even more ridiculous than it did in Ohio.
That's right. I always think about this Reader's Digest interview with Denzel Washington, where they asked him, is it tough living in godless Hollywood? And he says, what is that? Godless Hollywood. Hollywood is just it's a place. It's a geographical space. That's like saying godless Chicago, right? Or godly Nebraska. It's like places are just places, and you've got a variety of people in every place. And just like with sports, we get so accustomed to saying things like LeBron James and the Lakers, Steph Curry and the Warriors. We define entire teams and organizations by the one person that is most noticeable or most famous. And we overlook the fact that that one person that we talk about all the time wouldn't be able to accomplish any of those things without the other players and members of the organization. And it's the same way within the city. We have characters and personalities that are larger than life, that are easy for us to talk about, but also there are always communities and networks and groups and individuals in all of these places that the media will never talk about. Why? Because they don't fit the narrative. They don't fit the stereotype. They don't make for interesting gossip, because they're boring people who just live simple lives. And you can find those wonderfully boring people everywhere you go. And LA isn't an exception. And that's a reminder that no matter where you live, you can expect to experience some people and some things that feel like they are in opposition to who you want to be. But if you look for it and you're intentional about it, you can always find people that you really connect with anywhere.
Yeah, I'm always puzzled when someone says they came to Southern California, which has roughly 20 million people here, maybe even more, depending on what boundaries you set up there. And I just couldn't find my people. And I get that. I understand that it can be difficult. Sometimes it feels like finding a needle in a stack of needles. And yet there are so many people here that share your beliefs, share your values, share your interests, share your hobbies. And you can certainly find them, especially now that we're empowered with so much technology. Going to simply meetup.com or to a bunch of different Facebook groups, there's a bunch of ways to connect with people. But also there are ways to disconnect from the consumer culture that Los Angeles provides. Not only is there a ton of nature, even in the heart of Hollywood, you can go to Runyon Canyon, all of a sudden you're not in that consumer culture anymore. You are on a hike. Or Anna lives up in Ventura County. She lives in Thousand Oaks, which is right on the border of Los Angeles County, Ventura County. I live in Ventura County. I live up in Ojai. And Ojai is so far removed from consumerism, there's not even a single chain store there. You can't go to a chain fast food restaurant or a retail store. It's local businesses only. And so I have to consume some things, but when I do from a local business there. And it doesn't feel like the impulse that if I go down to the Beverly Center, which is down the street from our studio, that can trigger some impulse that's going on inside of me, and it can make me feel inadequate. But removing yourself from it makes you understand that, I'm actually not inadequate. So I think disconnecting from the consumer culture, there are a bunch of ways you can do that, and it allows you then to reconnect with the people and the places with whom you want to connect.
And this wasn't part of the question, but I think it vibes well with the sentiment of the holidays, and that is, don't give up on people. Every place, every institution, every company, every family has people that have problems. You're gonna get that everywhere. People that you don't get along with, don't connect with, who don't make you say, this is my tribe. But don't let those things make you give up on people. There are always, everywhere on this earth, there are good people that can make you feel alive inside in ways you never imagined. Good people that can challenge you to think about things that you've never considered before, and who can challenge you to be better in ways that you would never challenge yourself. And always give other people the chance to show up in interesting ways, and give yourself the chance to bring things out of people that you didn't think were possible.
Yeah, who are the people? Who is the crowd with whom you want to steep yourself in? Because that's who you are going to become. And you can walk away from the one if it doesn't feel right to you because what? Oh, you know what? This is the crowd I was supposed to be with, or this is the crowd I've always been with, proximity, convenience, whatever you want to call it. And it's possible to disconnect from that so I can reconnect with something new and special and loving. Alabama, what time is it?
You know what time it is. It's time for the lightning round, where we answer your questions from TikTok.
Yes, indeed. You can follow The Minimalists on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, X, and Threads. We are at The Minimalists on all of those platforms. Now, during the lightning round, we each have 60 seconds to answer your question with a short, shareable, less than 140 character response. We call them minimal maxims. We put them in the show notes over at theminimalists.com/podcast, so you can copy and share our pithy little answers on social media if you'd like. And by the way, if you'd like minimal maxims to show up in your inbox every Monday morning with all of our show notes for free, we won't send you spam, we won't send you junk, or obviously, we won't send you advertisements, but we'll start your week off with a bit of simplicity. You can sign up for our email list over at theminimalists.email and get those minimal maxims in your inbox each week. Today's question is from Mike.
Hoarding isn't a choice. It's a condition that requires therapy and treatment. How is telling a hoarder to declutter any different from telling a depressed person to just smile more?
TK, just smile more.
This is one of those assumptions with a question mark. How is this question any different from an assumption that has a question mark added at the end? I want to answer it in good faith, but it's just funny. It's like it reminds me of like the loaded question fallacy. Josh, are you still beating people up every time you get angry at them? It's like, well,
Wait, what?
right. Like, wait, did that ever happen? Like, is that? I just look at this question. I go, wait, who did that? Like, who did that? Who said just declutter?
Yeah, but you know what is fascinating, and this is a comment from one of our videos where we're talking about hoarding, and I don't think there's any area where I have more compassion for people than hoarding, because I recognize that over 90% of us are some stage of hoarding. Now, what Mike is talking about here, stage 5 hoarders, where it reaches this terminus where you can't even walk around your home because it is so cluttered. Or maybe there's dead pets, or there's feces and bugs and odors throughout the house, or you have blocked exits. And that's a huge problem. But many of us, in fact, the vast majority of us, are stage 1 or stage 2 hoarders. A stage 1 hoarder just means you have light clutter in 2 or more rooms in your home. Well, that certainly describes most of America, right? But here's what happens, TK. A question like this gets posed because what we talk about gets misinterpreted as though we are simply telling hoarders they should declutter.
And maybe I'm being too hard on the question. Maybe I'm being unfair. So let me back up a little bit and be more charitable. Let me practice what I preach here. It also could be the case that Mike isn't even thinking about us, right? That this is that internet tendency. Whenever you see anything criticized, it's got to be about you. Or you see anything questioned, it's got to be about you. And it's okay if it is about me, but it also could just be a general observation of what happens in the culture, right? All you need is someone somewhere out there telling people, just declutter, in response to their observation of the hoarding problem. Because he didn't say it's us who's doing it. And so if anybody's doing that, it's worth addressing. It's worth putting it out there for the people that are having these types of conversations. So,
however, it's also possible, especially with the internet, to simply get into arguments with air.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think that's quite often what we're doing is we create some sort of straw man, or we're creating an argument for an argument that wasn't even made in the first place. And because this is a comment on one of our videos and a question that masquerades, well, it's a comment that masquerades as a question, it's there on one of our videos that is talking about hoarding, but there's a greater context for that. So let's put 60 seconds on the clock for TK. Maybe you can wax philosophical for Mike.
Or Wayne. Hey, helping others is a team effort. No, you can't cure someone of depression by telling them just smile more. You can't transform a hoarder into a non-hoarder by telling them just declutter. But what you can do is, to the best of your ability, make yourself available to people when they ask for help. And you can empathize with their challenges. You can affirm their honesty. You can encourage and praise the effort they're making. You can even share whatever perspective you think you have to offer. And most importantly, you can extend to them the grace to reject everything you have to say if it doesn't resonate or help them. Man, for me, I think that's the work that we do.
I'll add to that by saying, beware of the man who has the answers. If you show up somewhere online, you see someone who has all the answers, and if they're saying things like, just declutter to a hoarder, right? Or just smile more to a depressed person. Well, okay. First off, that's not even a useful answer. But even if that person has all of the useful answers, beware. Because the person who shows up with all of the answers and instruction, it may not be applicable to you. If you're a light hoarder and it doesn't really bother you that much, we're not telling you what you should do. We're not giving you the answer. If anything, we're raising some questions and making some observations about what we've seen in the world. But it's not our job to convince you, if you are a hoarder, that you should get rid of your things. We can help you see that you might have some things that are in the way, but it's up to you to decide whether or not you want to let go.
Yeah, that's right. And there are these two extremes. On one end, there's the extreme of advising people to just stop doing things that are unhealthy. That's not going to help anyone. Just stop doing it, right? Just do it. And then there's this other extreme of teaching people that every problem they have is something that can only be dealt with if they have some kind of professional treatment or therapy. The larger space that we occupy is this middle ground of having some difficulties and challenges that don't require professional treatment or therapy, but that simply require us to show up for each other and start having some honest conversations about things that are within our power to control, but that we've been too busy being on autopilot to even notice. We can help each other in that way.
Another question to answer, one of our fams' questions in a moment. But first, real quick, for right here, right now, here's one, actually two things going on in the life of the minimalist TK. First off, simplify everything. Our decluttering course opens up on January 1. So if you're a hoarder, just declutter with this course.
Oh, my stars.
Yes.
No, it's January 1, 72 hours only. Simplifyeverything.xyz is the website. And we really talk about decluttering everything in your life. It's not just the stuff, although that is the first week. And so there are 5 weeks, although you can take the course at your own pace. We've had some people spread it out over 17 weeks. Some people take it in the 5-week period that we drip it out to you. Whatever you want to do in terms of the pace that works for you. It's 5 different areas, though. So we set it up as 5 weeks: physical clutter, digital clutter, calendar clutter, financial clutter, and relationship clutter. All of these other types of clutter, because what we found when people start simplifying the physical stuff in their life, all of those material possessions were just a manifestation of these other forms of clutter. The digital clutter, the calendar clutter, the money clutter, and of course the relationship clutter in our lives. And so this course, what it does is it's 5 weeks, it's 17 videos, 45 clutter problem areas that we identify and make observations about. We've got 135 decluttering solutions, a 30-page workbook, and a bunch of student forums. Enrollment opens on January 1st, but you can pre-enroll today over at simplifyeverything.xyz. XYZ. It's me and Ryan and TK throughout this course. And I've got to tell you, TK and I did great, but Nicodemus stole the show. I absolutely loved his performance throughout the entire course as we're delivering these videos to you. And man, the feedback. You can check out the testimonials right now over at simplifyeverything.xyz. That's why we're offering it again, because we offered it once and I said, I want to make sure some people get value from this. And then we made sure a lot of people got value from it. We got a bunch of feedback and we learned how this really changed the direction for a lot of people who wanted to simplify their lives.
That's right. And it was a lot of fun making this because there were a lot of conversations about the different challenges we've helped people with over the last several months leading up to it. And it was really exciting because we hadn't done anything like this. So we were able to put together a lot of our ideas, a lot of stories, a lot of examples, and be able to walk people through the steps in a very practical way, in a way that feels very feasible as you go through it. So I'm pretty excited about this.
I love when Ryan and I were working on the course and then TK would come in and he's like, oh, what's my prompt? And I'm like, the just in case rule. And he's like, okay, let me tell you a story about a businessman. And all of a sudden, like, how did he do this? Like Ryan and I are pacing back and forth, making notes, and should I use a teleprompter or whatever it was? And the TK just walks in and he one take every time, straight to camera, and you delivered so much value. And some of the feedback has been outstanding. If you want to enroll, it's 72 hours only. It'll be open on January 1st. SimplifyEverything.xyz. You can watch the trailer over there now. We filmed the trailer for it. You can check out all of the different materials over there. SimplifyEverything.xyz. One more thing for you, TK. Love is everything. And we just put out the 10th anniversary edition of this book here, which doesn't have any words on the cover. It's called Everything That Remains. And this book was really the book that started it all for the minimalists in terms of getting the message out there to a broader audience. Yes, we had the minimalists.com, but before the podcast, before the Netflix films, before going viral on social media, before our TEDx talks, we put this book out and a bunch of media outlets picked it up and we did a 100-city tour and eventually our first Netflix film was centered around this book. And so we just released the 10th anniversary edition with a brand new cover from a talented Mexican artist. Her name is Grise, and you can see the artwork here. I mean, if you ever thought that Ryan could even get a more chiseled jawline, here it is. When you draw him geometrically, what a stunning cover. But that's not why I want to talk about this. If you want to check out the new edition of Everything That Remains, great. But we're doing something called Everything is Love Tour. Why is that? Well, because our second book, our most popular book, Everything That Remains, and of course, we have our New York Times bestselling book, Love People, Use Things, have reached a lot of people. And we want to go back on the road in 2024 for a handful of tour stops for something that's called the Everything is Love Tour. You can find the details at theminimalists.com/tour. Be the first to hear about any new live events in your city by signing up for our email list at theminimalists.email. Hopefully we'll be coming to a city near you. We're going to start with a handful of cities in California, and then we'll see where we go from there. All right, FAMs. When I say the word FAMs, Alabama, what does that mean to you?
FAMs. Oh, my favorite Friday of the month. It's a whole tradition for me. I get my whole house set up and make sure that the cat's not going to interrupt the call. But I sit in with my nice little cozy beverage of choice, whether that's coffee, whether that's some bone broth or something,
Tequila.
whatever I'm feeling. Tequila, I'm sure some folks have probably done that. It's 5 o'clock somewhere. But man, do I enjoy that. And this past one was probably one of my favorites. We had so much connection going on, both video with folks one-on-one and in the chat. It is so, so beautiful to see people connecting and reconnecting month after month when we do this. And I look forward to pinging certain people saying, hey, how is this going? You mentioned that this was going on. How's your cat? I know you said that they were in the vet last week or da-da-da-da. And I love getting to connect with people like that. Oh, it just makes my extrovert heart so happy.
So our FAMs is the Friday afternoon minimalist Zoom that Alabama's talking about. We connect with our patrons over on Zoom. We have a Zoom call with you once a month. You can come in there and turn on your camera and you can ask us some questions, or you can just be a fly on the wall, turn your camera off, turn your microphone off, and just sit by and observe. We also record these for folks who can't attend the live Friday afternoon minimalist Zoom, but also as we are participating in the chat with each other, Malabama's in there collecting some of your questions. Do you have one for us today, Bama?
I sure do. This was actually a comment that I loved from Lori. She said, I always appreciate that the friendship and respect between Joshua and TK do not hinge on having the same opinions. It is a sign of maturity that you let each other be who you are according to your value systems without trying to modify the other person's identity in any way.
You know what? And I would say the same thing with Ryan. Like, all three of us have different values, different belief systems. We question things differently. We have our own neuroses as well. And TK, you've helped me really expand that comfort zone even, because I can get really judgmental and want to change the people around me. And, of course, I've got the ideal point of view, and why can't I just get them to understand? But I think what we're articulating here with this particular fam's question, who asked this one, or who?
This was from Lori.
So what Lori's articulating here is it's possible, not just possible to have different points of view, but it's possible to have a more interesting life when you're around other people with different points of view.
That's absolutely right. But it feels very personal, right? When someone says, I disagree with you, it feels like I disagree with your existence. I disagree with the fact that there is a you out there in the universe. And that's not what it means. It often means I have a different point of view. I stand in a different place with a different set of influences, with different baggage than you, different assumptions than you. There are some areas of life where I know more than you and some areas where I know less. And the way that all comes together for me looks different than how it comes together for you. And we don't have to treat our beliefs as if they don't matter just because everyone else doesn't share them. And we don't have to treat our friendships as if we don't have that ability to connect with one another just because we don't connect over everything. And I think you, Ryan, and myself, we're able to find that common ground upon which we can stand so that we can laugh together, explore together, serve others together, create together. And it's a beautiful thing. And I couldn't imagine life without that perspective.
And I think the beautiful thing about it is it often changes my mind in subtle and nuanced ways. It's not like, oh, my favorite color is blue until I met TK, and now my favorite color is red because that's his favorite color.
Right.
But it's opening up to the possibility of like, oh, there's more than one color here that I'm allowed to like. And I think opening up the conversations in a respectful way, even if I disagree with you, is so much more inviting and freeing than condemnation for your point of view.
That's right. And the paradoxical thing about representing a belief, which I don't think is a pressure we need to be carrying around. Like, not everything that you think is something that you have to be an ambassador for. It's okay to just think it, you know? But even if you are an ambassador, sometimes the best way to represent what you think is to be unthreatened by opposing points of view. Sometimes that makes you and what you believe look better than any argument you can give for it, is you can present it and be in the presence of someone who says, I think that's stupid. And you can say, okay.
Spot on. We got so much more to talk about. But first, Malabama, what else you got for us?
Here's a minimalist insight from one of our listeners.
Hi, Minimalists. As a longtime listener, reader, and huge fan, I subscribe on Patreon to your second highest tier level, attended y'all's most recent Seattle live event at the Neptune Theater, and am currently enrolled in JFM's writing course. Though I'm a bit behind on the lessons, I'm not giving up. My fiancée Hillary and I have both found big-time benefits. One might even say added value from the teachings of the Starettes on episode 417, and from Aaron Alexander on episode 333. I'm currently a resident artist at the Toledo Opera and often use a keyboard to practice and learn music. I decided to lower the keyboard almost to the floor to force myself to floor sit when practicing and playing the piano. As of this writing, I have not missed sitting on a chair at all while at the keyboard, but I do sometimes use pillows to support my knees and hips. Hillary, who is much newer to minimalism but an eager participant, has been clearing clutter like crazy. has adopted a Paul Saladino-ian diet, is tirelessly jettisoning debt, and most recently decided to eschew the excess height of her dining room table, cutting off about 18 inches of IKEA-procured table leg 4 times over. A family member recently commented, "I guess I won't be coming over for dinner," to which she responded to me, "I'm glad we're setting up our lives perfectly for how we want to live every day, as opposed to what we think possible guests might want or expect when they come over a few times a year." What a brilliant point. We certainly want to be accommodating hosts, and we'll do our best to make people comfortable in our home, but her logic is undeniable. Minimalism is a tool, not the destination. This tool is very helpful when prioritizing what matters in our relationship that, for us, for now, spans several time zones, income levels, and employment uncertainties. I talk about y'all so much with her that if it's been a half hour or so more into a conversation before I bring you up, I'm definitely sure to mention it.
All right, y'all. We'll see you on Patreon for the full 2-hour maximal edition of episode 423, which includes answers to a bunch more questions. Questions like, how do I help my parents with their digital hoard? All of that digital clutter. How do I declutter my plants if I have too many? How is it possible to raise kids without social media these days? And a bunch more questions over there on the Minimalist Private Podcast. Also, we've got a private Minimalist home tour this week from one of our listeners. It's a simple, multi-purpose living room with some Christmas decorations, but it's really, really simple. Plus, much, much more of less. And if you want to hear all that, visit patreon.com/theminimalist or click the link in the description to subscribe and get your personal link so that our weekly maximal episodes play in your favorite podcast app. You'll also gain access to all of our podcast archives all the way back to episode 001. By the way, Patreon is now offering free trials, so if you'd like to test drive our private podcast, you can join for 7 days for free. And that's our minimal episode for today. If you leave here with just one message, let it be this: love people and use things, because the opposite never works. Thanks for listening, y'all.
We'll see you next time.
Peace.
Merry Christmas.